Northern end of Otsego Lake, Tin Top, the grounds of historic Hyde Hall. Tin Top, the original gatehouse that was about a mile out that way at the entryway to Hyde Hall years ago. Had to come in that way through the Tin Top gatehouse, come up the road, straight ahead there, and then end up coming up here. Those buildings were not here, but then you came up to a historic Hyde Hall. Beautiful place, beautiful stone home. One of the oldest homes, English style type homes in the United States. At one point, this home was the largest home in the United States of America. In fact, Mount Vernon, George Washington's home, would actually fit inside of this home here. You wonder to yourself, how did an English gent get here? Well, in 1806, George Clark said goodbye to his first wife and his 5 children in England. He traveled to New York. He settled in Albany and employed Richard Cooper to manage his properties. Richard died prematurely, and George married his widow, Anne, in 1814. Soon the Clarks moved into Hyde Hall. Throughout his life, George Clark invested in New York's early industries, including canals, railroads, Hudson River docks, and iron and glass manufactory. With his growing wealth, he developed roads, established villages, and controlled a vast empire of tenant farms on his land holdings. His wife, Anne, whose full name was Anne Lowe Carey Cooper Clark, was one of the most prominent women to live in this home. Well, in 1825, George Clark inherited Swanswick, a sugarcane plantation with hundreds of enslaved people from Jamaica, or in Jamaica too. This contributed to the family's wealth and helped to fund the construction of historic Hyde Hall. So as we travel up around Hyde Hall, we're going to show you the national marker here. Historic landmark in 1986 was placed here. Architect Philip Hooker's masterful design combines the refined English country house with the architectural traditions of an early 19th century America. Hyde Hall stands as a unique social document and as a monument to the Clark family who built and lived in it for over 130 years. Well, let's take a walk over to historic Hyde Hall. The main house here we're looking at. The back over here is the servants' quarters. The servants lived in there on the back side of the house. Very rarely, if you attended one of the functions at the Clarks, you would never see a servant. Everything was done through secrecy, through little panels, little walls, stoves fed from the back into the main parlor, the dining room, hallways. So the servants were not seen by the public or by the attendees who were invited to some of the events that the Hydes held here. Now the balcony up there is very interesting. Of course, many weddings were held here. One of the weddings held here was in the years following the sinking of the Titanic. Now, the Titanic holds part of history in this place as well. For 1912, on April 8th, a family living up in Springfield, New York, the Ryersons, Arthur and Emily Ryerson, Emily Borey Ryerson was her full name, their son was killed in an automobile accident in 1908, or 1912 on April 8th. Sorry, just a week before the Titanic sailed. Actually, it was just a couple of days. So before the Titanic sailed, the Ryerson family, Arthur Ryerson, his wife Emily Borey, their son John, and their daughters Emily and Suzanne, or Suzette, were all aboard Titanic to get over from France, where they were staying, to take care of the needs and their son's and brother's funeral. Well, we all know what happened on April 15th. Morning of April 15th, the Titanic sunk, and all of the Ryersons survived except the father, Arthur Ryerson. Well, a couple of years later, maybe 4 years later, 1916 it was, Emily Ryerson Jr. was married to a Clark here, George Clark. They were married down in Cooperstown, just behind me here, south at Christ Church, right in the village. But the reception was held here, and photographs were taken on this portico in front of this building. So Hyde Hall, and there's many other details that deal with the Titanic in Cooperstown, the Ryerson, but that's just a little snippet here of what happened that day, that time period in our history. So we're going to look out over Otsego Glimmer Glass Lake down towards the village of Cooperstown. And we're going to leave this beautiful early 19th century home, historic Hyde Hall.